I knew I was writing a book about love. I knew I was writing a book about Sicily and food and family, but it was also very much a book about grief. It was always a trauma with a sudden, unexpected diagnosis, which his was. He was, for the most part, in health, young, in his 30s. Being at the side of a chef, you learn a lot about food and you learn a lot about the power of it. And he passed away. I thought I had lost all of that. Your whole being is changed when you are in deep grief. And so you need foods that will optimally give you what you need to get to the next day. And if they provide comfort and are tasty and put a smile on your face along the way, all the better. Let me just say for myself, was really trying to reawaken myself to the world, reawaken my senses to the world, and understand that I could still have joy at the table without my chef.
Dear Family is a podcast hosted by Rachel Steinman, a writer, an educator, and a mental health advocate. And Rachel gets us up close and personal, so we feel a strong connection, familiarity, and comfort with her guests. So settle in and join us as we search for true healing and journey with Rachel and her most interesting guests.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dear Family, the podcast. This is episode number 97, and I am so grateful you're here listening. I wanted to just share a little personal victory. A few days ago, as of recording this, I got to go back to my old high school to present for National Alliance on Mental Illness. I got to stand on the very stage that I spent 3 years in dance production. I got to do a in-person presentation to End the Silence, all about educating youth on finding resources and hope and recognizing warning signs and knowing that the earlier they ask for help, the better, and the earlier they get help, the better, and just getting rid of the shame and the stigma and just having that conversation. And it was really, really exciting personally for me to be back at my high school. And then later that night, I got to go and speak to families at a different high school. It really sparks my joy knowing that I am connecting with others and that this conversation about mental health and sharing our personal stories really does make a difference. Today, I am so excited to bring you Tembi Locke. She's not only beautiful, she's just a beautiful storyteller. And I know you're going to love and be touched by her story from scratch. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing and sharing, Dear Family. And you can find me on all the social media platforms. That's Right Now Rachel. That's right with the W. And if you want to see my huge smile, make sure to check out my Instagram or Facebook and you'll see me on the stage that I used to dance on. Without further ado, enjoy Tembi Locke and remember to take care of your mental health. It's so important, and so are you. Tembi Locke is an actor, an author, a screenwriter, and a producer who really knows how to connect with her audience. Her New York Times bestselling book From Scratch, A Memoir of Love, Sicily, and Finding Home, was Reese Witherspoon's 2019 book club pick. Reese loved it so much, she's executive producing the adaptation for a Netflix series where Zoe Saldana will star as Tembi. Tembi's memoir From Scratch is a sweeping autobiographical romance that follows an American woman as she falls in love with a Sicilian man while studying abroad in Italy, and then builds a life with him in the United States. When she unexpectedly loses her young Italian chef husband to illness, she's challenged to pull herself through grief so she can raise their adopted daughter as they would have raised her together, with hope, joy, and infinite love. Cooking becomes a way for her to be close to Saro, both in Los Angeles and in his mother Nona's kitchen, and why mourning food, that's mourning with a U, offers comfort and sustenance. It's why a bowl of pasta always makes us feel so much better. Tembi has over 60 film and television credits under her belt as an accomplished actor and is currently recurring on Never Have I Ever, a comedy created by Mindy Kaling. Offscreen, Tembi is a nationally recognized speaker for her keynote on resilience, loss, and motherhood, with her TEDx talk viewed by individuals and nonprofits worldwide. Tembi is here today to remind us to embrace resilience, to love, and remember the power of community. Welcome, Tembi. You and I met maybe 5 years ago at a UCLA writing class, and you recommended that I take Allison Singh's writing class, which I did. And then I ended up joining her writing group. And it's been so much fun to follow you and see your success. I'm still working on my memoir, so I know it's not an easy feat. And watching you become Reese Witherspoon's book club and now your Netflix series, you are just such an inspiration to me. I'm so thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm honored to be here. I'm glad we get to meet in this way again. And I'm so excited when I find how a writing community brings people together and how we all inspire each other, because there's so many people that I look to and I go, oh gosh, how did they do that? And just knowing that it's possible is sometimes the best way to make it through a difficult day or a difficult passage or structural issues you're having with your writing. I'm happy that my work is doing that for others as much as I get it from other people.
I remember talking to you, and at that point, you were telling me you were working on it for years. It was my first writing class and thinking like, I don't know if I have this in me. And here I am years later, I'm still working on it.
Yeah, I worked on this book a long time before I started writing the book.
I'm telling you, it gives me some fuel. So thank you. This podcast is called Dear Family because we celebrate complicated families and there's no one size fits all family. I would love for you to start by telling us a little bit about where you grew up and about your family.
I grew up in Houston, Texas, in the 70s, 80s, two parents who divorced. They were civil rights activists who came together to change the world, had two kids, realized the world takes a long time to change, also realized maybe they weren't meant to be married together, separated. My mom remarried, my father remarried. I have three brothers. I have two stepsisters. So lots of blending, lots of change, lots of creating new family beyond the nuclear one. And then I went to Italy, which is I write about in my book, fell in love, created a new family of my own with my late husband, Saro. And we welcomed a daughter who is now a teen. And Saro passed away when she was 7. So then I went from being a family of 3, the mom and dad, to being a widowed single mom. And then 2 years ago, I repartnered. And so I'm in another blended family with my daughter. I've seen many forms of family. I'm creating and have created 2 families of my own choosing as an adult person. And I have lots of extended family in the form of my grandparents. One grandmother is still with me, but also lots of cousins and whatnot. So that's the sort of structure, if you will, the scaffolding.
I love that. I, like you, have step parents and divorces on both sides of my parents' family, half siblings, step siblings. Tell us about your sister, Attica.
My sister, Tembi Locke, is both my ride or die, as they say. And we were joking actually just the other day. We said, someone asking, why are you guys so close? And like, was it always that way? And I was, no, I think childhood was all about, let's just get through this together. Like, let's just get out of this whole situation together. And then later we'll decide if we want to be friends. And then as adults, we became good friends. It's not uncommon for people to sort of like just survive all the changes that happen to children over the course of those first formative imprinting 18 years of their lives, right? So Attica is my younger sister. She is an accomplished novelist and an award-nominated and winning screenwriter as well. She lives here in Los Angeles, so we're 10 minutes apart. She's also my co-collaborator and co-partner in writing and developing the series based on my book. So we are very close and meshed in each other's lives. We text countless times during the day, talk at least 6 or 7 during the course of the day, mostly predicated on the fact that we are like in the trenches of working on a project right now. But even if we weren't in a project, there would be maybe cut that number in half, maybe talk 3 times a day and text only 5. But the point is we have a high level of connection and communication.
What a blessing to get to work with your sister like that. How amazing. How exciting. Let's talk about your book from scratch. I devoured it and I was crying. I felt all the emotions. You did such a beautiful job. You painted beautiful scenery. And I really loved your storytelling. I loved how it wasn't linear. Why did you write it that way?
I did write it linearly. First, that is not where I ended up, but I had to write it in a straight line first. I always say start with what is familiar and what you know how to do, get that under your belt, and then you can play around. My book covers or has a sort of a toe in 3 separate decades. It's in 2 countries, in 3 cities. It's in 3 languages. I knew for the reader that it would be very easy to get lost in time and space. It was hard for me to wrap my own head as an intellectual practice of sort of wrapping my mind around the components, the moving parts of the structure of the story. And so I needed to sort of literally lay that out in a linear fashion before I could use the themes of the book to move the pieces around. But I needed to lay it out first. To your question of why didn't I just keep it that way? I knew I was writing a book about love. I knew I was writing a book about Sicily and food and family, but it was also very much a book about grief. And grief does not move in a linear fashion. It doesn't march in a straight line. And I wanted the book to feel as immersive and as experiential as I possibly could. And so I needed to have those moments where you're in one place and you turn a page and you're in a new place. And then you turn a page again and you're in a different time. And then you turn a page again and you're someplace else. But it's that we are marching along the emotional through line of the character. So we actually are never really lost. That was my hope, that I wouldn't lose the reader along the way. And I credit my editor, quite frankly, with us landing on what is the final structure that you as the readers enjoy, because she saw things that I couldn't see because I was too close to it. And she was like, I think if you actually try this, moving this way up, it's actually not part 3. Maybe that's a part 1. And she just threw out big questions for me to sit with. And then I would decide what felt intuitively authentic and true. And then I went with it. And what landed was this mosaic of a lifetime of experiences that in their totality, the sum is greater than the individual parts.
Absolutely. I felt that. Thank you for walking us through that. You met Saro while studying abroad. Where were you? And tell us about your courtship.
I was on my junior year study abroad, not an unfamiliar thing for many college students. And so I decided I wanted to go to Italy. And I thought I'm just going to soak in all the art history I can, have a great time. And I was never really expecting what happened to happen. And so I was walking along the street with a friend and we quite literally collided. And that moment, that brush with fate or destiny or whatever you would call it, set in motion the beginnings of a relationship. I didn't know that. I didn't see that at the time. I was 20 years old. I was certainly not thinking, oh, I'm going to meet my soulmate on a block in Italy. No, but my Saro, my late husband, talked about that experience of meeting, the sort of meet cute, as they say, as he knew instantly. And he saw something that I was slow to see. And he took the time to unfurl that for me and sort of make himself deeply available to me in the hopes that I would see what he saw. I actually credit him very much with our beginning because he inducted me into a vision that he held for the possibility of what we might be. And it didn't take me long to sort of catch on. And his courtship was very subtle, but direct, clear. It was without pretense. It was vulnerable, but dynamic and bold and forthright and sincere. And some of those elements were so foreign to me that I actually thought this can't be real. Like, what? People are what? No, but it was real. And he made love an action. It was an action for him. And so in all of these ways, he was showing and demonstrating to me a kind and quality of love that I sort of knew in a fantastical world might exist, but certainly didn't know it in my deep bones and lived experience with someone who I might partner with. The courtship was very romantic. The backdrop is Florence, Italy. And he said, let's see where this can go.
That is so romantic. For him, it was love at first sight, and he knew. Saro's father did not accept you at the beginning, and he refused to even come to your wedding, even after you held it in Sicily. Tell us about that and how your relationship changed over time.
So Saro, even though we met in Florence, was born in Sicily and to a traditional Sicilian family, rural, not from the city, but from a small agrarian mountain town with about, maybe at that time, maybe 900 people. So we're talking a very small place where there's a sort of generations of people have lived in the same blocks and do the same things and have been farmers and passed down land and all of that stuff. And he broke with that family tradition in that way. He had a different vision of his life and for his life. And so his leaving Sicily and having landed in Florence already set forth a kind of father-son rupture in that parent-child dynamic. And his father just didn't understand who he was, didn't approve of his choices. And when I came along and Soto moved to the States to be with an American who was an actress, who was Black, whose parents were divorced, I wasn't Catholic, all the things. It was beyond what his father could really wrap his head around and had any direct experience with. And so it was easier to reject. Not so much even me, because he hadn't met me, but the idea of who I was and the idea of the choices his son was making. And so he forbid anyone in the family to come to our wedding. It was actually held in Florence. I thought, oh, we'll have the wedding in Italy. Surely they'll come. They didn't come. And why I write about it is, one, it happened and it's a part of the formative early part of our relationship and our love and our marriage. But I also write about it because something else remarkable happened, which is to say that I, being who I am, and we talked earlier about the family that I come from, and a part of, I think, of the quality of the people who raised me, both parents, but also my grandparents and the people around, there was sort of a philosophy in our family, which was sort of like, it doesn't have to be that way. I'm going to try something different. I was raised to sort of say, well, okay, I look for the best in people. I understand we all have our impediments and our failings and our shortcomings and our blind spots. I do, for sure, of my own. But I also know that we can sometimes rise above those. And then my feeling about Soto's family was, if they just meet me, they'll love me. That was that idea, right? And so I pushed for Soto to sort of confront this rupture in his family. Less so about me and like, oh, I need them to like me, but more because I saw the hurt in him as his wife. I could see the hurt of a son who was essentially exiled from his family. And I thought, well, let's try to heal that. And if it doesn't heal, we'll know we tried. And it's from that place that I said, we're going to Sicily. And I bought the tickets. I kind of bombarded him with this whole idea. And we went to Sicily. And I won't give much more away except to say that there was the beginning of a turning of the tide. And from that, we began to sort of have gentle inroads into the family. And eventually we began to travel there very regularly, annually, and developed a closeness with his family insofar as they respected me as his wife. I think they appreciated the kind of grace I gave them on not coming to the wedding. And that would become very important later when he was diagnosed.
I'm so glad that you had that within you to know that they would fall in love with you if they just met you. You have this inner glow. And I love that you point out the fact that your parents taught you not to give up. Like, just because someone's thinking that way doesn't mean you accept it.
Yeah. And by the way, I didn't go there thinking I would dislodge, because I didn't know what I was going to meet. I didn't know if this was really like true, deep, intransigent, nothing will ever change. But I knew Soto needed to extend the olive branch of peace first. We needed to do that. And if they were going to come, great, and we would take that journey. But if they chose not to come, then our conscience would be clean. We did what we could. And so I could put my head on the pillow every night, knowing that I had tried to help my partner, my husband, the love of my life, heal some part of himself. I couldn't go to bed every night knowing that there was some part of him that was hurting. And I was just co-signing on like, hey, let's just hang out in this uncomfortable thing that doesn't work. I couldn't co-sign on that. And whether they liked me or not became immaterial. At a certain point, it was really about the two of them and that family unit. And then later, they started to like me.
And your father-in-law was a farmer. Tell the listeners what kind of farm.
Oh, traditional for his region of Sicily. So the traditional things, obviously, family does their own olive oil, but there's garlic, artichokes. Those sort of his two key big staples is what he sold, but also seasonal. There were tomatoes at times, but I mean, literally would take them to market.
Mediterranean,
take them to market. In his region of Sicily, they provide, I want to say something like 80% of the artichokes of all of that are sold in mainland Italy come out of this region of Sicily. So it's artichoke farming is a big thing. And he did that.
Amazing. And Saro was an incredible chef. Tell us about finding out about Saro's illness.
This was in 2002, 20 years ago now. Hard to believe sometimes even saying that because it feels so immediate and close still. But as I think trauma does, because there's always a trauma with a sudden unexpected diagnosis, which his was. He was, for the most part, in health, young, in his 30s. He was having some sort of knee issues. His knee was bothering him. We didn't really think much of it because he's a chef, and people who are hairdressers and chef and stand a lot can get cysts in their knees and kind of can have knee pain. So not anything particularly concerning, but it was bothering him enough that we kind of were like, you need to go. Cut to X-rays, MRIs, scans. He had a rare soft tissue cancer that was first presenting itself in his bones. That set us on the path, and the diagnosis was leiomyosarcoma, and which is a rare soft tissue cancer. And we immediately began chemotherapy, and he stopped working, and I became a caregiver instantly. In the man of this, like 48 hours. It's like, wait, what?
Unbelievable. Thank you for pointing out that getting a diagnosis like that is traumatic, because that's a moment when everything changes.
No, it's a trauma. Mm-hmm.
You and Soto decide the best course of action, knowing that you wanted to have children, was to move forward with adoption. And I actually just shared an episode about adoption and foster care and learned so much about it. You remind us all that family can be chosen when you and Saro adopt Zoella. Tell us about the adoption and about your beautiful daughter.
She's stunning and amazing and beautiful and fun. But yes, that process that I write about in the book was an extremely heart-opening, expansive, life-changing moment, as becoming a parent is for everyone. Our path looked the way it looked, which was working with a wonderful agency, which is based in the Bay Area, and really just wanting to grow our family. And when she came into our lives, we had a fairly quick process, as these processes go. And just like we met on that street corner in Florence, we bumped into each other, and there was a kind of fate and destiny. I believe our children come to us in the same way. And that is certainly how she came into our lives, and it happened quickly, and it was love at first sight. And we had all the new parenting overwhelm that you have as a new parent, but we were also so incredibly grateful. And I think that one of the things that we really knew consciously going into the idea of becoming parents was the idea, having had years of, at that point, probably 2 to 3 years of cancer care in our background. And at that point, it was in our rearview mirror because he was in remission. We really understood the intentionality of living each day. And that became a kind of North Star and a guiding principle for us as parents, which was to say, there's nothing casual about, I would think, about becoming parents in general, but certainly becoming a parent through adoption with cancer as a lived experience as a couple. And we wanted to really give to each other the kinds and quality of love that we knew could lift all of us and would create our own little beautiful family. And so that's how Zoella came to us.
Besides being a reminder, family doesn't have to be blood. It is a reminder. A lot of young parents, when they have kids, they try to just get through the days. The expression, the days are long, but the years are short. You made sure to appreciate those days.
I do consider having been through cancer or diagnosis or treatment as a kind of loss. And what I mean by that, it is the loss of the life that you thought you would have. It's not obviously the loss of a person because you're still here, but the paradigm has shifted a bit. or a lot. I have a friend who came to parenthood having lost her mom. And for her, the way that manifested, she understood the preciousness of time. And so she was an incredible documenter. She has to document everything all the time, all the time, all the time, because she understood how fleeting it was because she lost her own mom. And so she always wanted to have this. So I think those of us who come to the table with parenting, with some of these lived experiences, we bring to it a kind of intentionality. For better or for worse. Our kids will be like, stop with the taking pictures, stop with the everyday.
I think it's for better. Your Sicilian in-laws came to America to take care of their dying son, and they had never been to America before. What was it like having these foreign in-laws stay with you during such an incredibly difficult time in your life?
Over the course of Saro's illness, there were 3 separate trips. I write about 2 in the book, but there were 3 separate ones. But my mother and father-in-law came twice to care for him during treatment. But then at the end of his life, his sister and her husband came. I will say, if I take a composite of all of those trips, they'd been to America once before when they had immigrated briefly and then returned to Sicily, which is a whole other story. But they're coming to Los Angeles at a time, not coming here because they wanted to see Disneyland or see the Hollywood sign or go to the Walk of Stars along Hollywood Boulevard, but coming because after years of fracture and coming because now they want to be of service to their ill son. That raised the stake for the emotion for all of us. And I, as Saro's wife and partner, were integrating them into our home, our way of being, as well as being sort of their cultural ambassador to how things worked in America, to being their translators. And it was a lot of extra work and emotional labor. And I was also seeing firsthand their nuclear family or unit play itself out. When I look back on it, it had so much complexity. And thank God I had the presence of mind to sort of jot. I was journaling. I've always been a big journaler, and I wrote a lot of that down, which is how I was able to write the book. Because I went back to those journals of writing about what it was like when they first arrived and going to get bread and having to explain to them how the TV worked while I'm taking him to chemotherapy. And it was just like so much. But the final trip, when his sister and brother-in-law came with the express knowledge that they were saying goodbye, whether we said that aloud, which I don't think we did. I think we all knew that. That was poetic and unforgettable and painful, but also the greatest gift that ever happened. And I'm so grateful to Franca, my sister-in-law, and my brother-in-law Cosimo for coming, for the grace. And they were very helpful insofar as they gave to Saro a piece of himself at the end of his life that I could have never given him. I met him when he was already in his 30s. So I did not come to the table with a native mother tongue, shared memories from childhood, memories of street vendors and birds and the Mediterranean Sea. I didn't have that. And at the end of his life, to have his sister by his side, to be able to talk about that, to be able to laugh at things in dialect that I didn't know what they were talking about, was an absolute gift. And I'm so grateful to her for doing it. I'm so grateful for the gift of time. And the gift of the story of these 2 families coming together had evolved to such a point.
I'm so glad you journaled. It is those little things like how to use a remote that really helps put somebody in that place and time. Bella brings up the race question when she notices that you're the only Black and brown people in Sicily, unlike living in Los Angeles. Why was the Black priest so significant?
Oh my gosh. Thank you. No one's ever asked me that question talking about the book. I love that question. After Saro passed away, I began going to Sicily each summer to be with my mother-in-law, because at that point we had done a lot of repair work in our relationship, and I was seeking a closeness with her. I think she was seeking a closeness with me. I wanted Zoella to know her grandmother in Sicily. By then, my father-in-law had passed away. So both Saro and his father deceased. So it's just me, Zoella, and her grandma, my mother-in-law, each summer in a small Sicilian town. And so I'm watching the comings and goings of the small town, which is everyone there. I think the median age in town is probably like 54. There's like not a lot of kids, not a lot of young people, a significant older population of people. And it's a small, sleepy town. And I love it. And it's idyllic in many ways. But we're seeing the same faces over and over again. And the current population of the town is probably 600 right now. So it's not a lot of people. And during the summer, the church there in town, the priest, who is the priest of their parish, their church, usually goes on some sort of holiday. And so a substitute or interim priest, I'm not Catholic, so I don't know the exact term, comes in and covers, if you will, the priest. And so this particular summer, there was a man from Burundi, an African man who was the priest, who was just learning Italian. And he was responsible with the souls and the spiritual guidance of the small parish of Sicilian, mostly widows at this point, for the summer. He was just the delight of all delights for us, because when people of color meet in places where there's not lots of people of color, you notice each other. And although I have literally never been to his home country, I do not speak the language. I would be hard pressed to actually find it on a map. I felt a kind of kinship to him and his presence there, even just insofar as he was also an outsider, attempting to immerse himself and be a part of the community. And so to that degree, we felt a kind of connection. And my daughter in particular loved that we would go to mass and he would lead the mass. And his Italian was like in and out, and she could pick that up. And so I think for her, she saw a man who was learning like she was learning and understanding. And my mother-in-law was very proud to have this man be the priest and introduce us to him. And it was just one of those sort of, the world seemed to close ranks, all of these different and disparate cultures. I never would have thought in a small Sicilian town that I would have this intersection of so many cultures right there. And it was lovely and great.
Hopefully it's in the series. We'll have to tune in to see. When you use the last of the liquid Sicilian summer tomato sauce, which is a sofrito that you took from Sicily and you stored in your cupboard, it reminded you to allow yourself to surrender, just like how the garlic surrenders to the olive oil. And those are two things that your father-in-law grew. How did cooking become a way for you to be so close to Saro, both in LA and in Nona's kitchen? And why is morning food, morning with a U, all about comfort and sustenance? And boil it down, why is a bowl of pasta make you feel better?
Having been married to a chef, we were together for 20 years, half my life when he passed away at that point. Being at the side of a chef, you learn a lot about food and you learn a lot about the power of it. And I don't mean it in the way that I find is commonly discussed in the present day America about food. It's either about like food plans or types of food, or there's all those sort of rules. The conversation around food seems to be hijacked in forms of right and wrong. So let's move out of that discussion and just be with food as a part of the beauty of life, the thing that gives us energy, that codifies and reminds us of who we are, food that carries stories, food as a love language. That's the way I like to talk about food and Italian food and the food that I knew in the decades that we spent together. And so after he passed away, I thought I had lost all of that because he wasn't here to do that. And he was the one who did all the cooking. So I had to find my way to literally to the kitchen itself, that physical space in my house, because it was so charged emotionally with his presence and so many memories. I kind of didn't want to go there. In grief, we often know of people who are like, I don't go into my son's room after he passed away, or I won't touch my husband's closet. Well, for me, it was the damn kitchen. And I couldn't live in a house where I couldn't walk into a kitchen. And so I had to begin to make peace with it. Some of that was beginning to cook the things that he had cooked. I write about that first dish that I made by myself for me in the way that he would have, with him in my mind's eye guiding me as to what to do. And that's the tomato sauce and the sofrito bowl of pasta, which was a love language. And for him. And I felt his presence with me as I did that. And I went through that ritual, an experience that was my grief path because of who he was in our relationship. For someone else, it might be the first time after your father passes. And if you guys worked on cars together, you work on a car together. The first time you're doing it by yourself and how you do that. Over time, I find as I began to cook a little bit more and a little bit more, I would call my mother-in-law in Sicily and I'd say, how do you do this? And I would begin to be in dialogue with her to see how to make things and to be in conversation with her about how to prepare things the Sicilian way, the way she would, the way she taught him. And I felt like I was beginning to sort of get my own sea legs, but also find a way to be in conversation with a whole part of myself and my history and my life together with him. And when I went to her home each summer, she would make certain foods. And those were healing foods. And those were foods that were for people who were mourning. And in Sicily, there are, as in many parts of the world, there are certain foods which are known to sort of really build people back up, to be dense in nutrients, to be soothing, to be easily digestible. I mean, when I talk about the fact that a grieving person's whole physiology changes, the way in which you are able to even digest food is different. Your whole being is changed when you are in deep grief. And so you need foods that will optimally give you what you need to get to the next day. And if they provide comfort and are tasty and put a smile on your face along the way, all the better. Let me just say for myself, was really trying to reawaken myself to the world, reawaken my senses to the world, and understand that I could still have joy at the table without my chef.
I got very emotional thinking about that. It's really true about food, how it elicits such strong memories of people that we love that may have passed, whether it's a grandparent or maybe people that moved to foreign lands and wanting food from their childhood. I also love how you and Saro planted fava beans in the front of your garden in Los Angeles, and they're considered to be one of the only plants that actually give back to earth, and they continue to thrive. That's another really beautiful way for you to connect to him. When it comes to Soto and Sicily and your writing, you elicit a lot of imagery of gods and mythology. And I love how you say that you were the pearl to Soto's Mediterranean Ocean. You've continued to go back to the land that was Soto's, that now lovingly you've inherited. Tell us what that's like and how Soto's sister feels about you having this family land and what it means when you go there.
It's beautiful to go there. I think the last 2 years with COVID has been a disruptor, and we felt that a great deal. So I feel at where I sit today, 2 years of a lot of emotional trauma for all of us. I was actually there last summer because we were filming the television series, but I wasn't able to spend an extended period of time there because I was working and we were filming. But it is lovely to know that a piece of that place is always there and we're always welcome and we can return to. Nona has since passed away, and so the house ownership has been transferred. My daughter, myself, my sister-in-law all hold it together. There's the land that is just the land for us. I couldn't ask for a more gentle and loving sister-in-law. And we actually just talked a couple of days ago and she's doing well. And I hope to get back there soon. I don't know that we'll be able to go this summer, but it's always there.
From scratch, your memoir creates these beautiful, visually stunning images with fruit vendors and beautiful earth in Sicily. And I'm so excited for you that your memoir has been adapted for a Netflix series with your sister Attica as the showrunner and producer, and with Reese Witherspoon executive producing. And drumroll, Zoe Saldana plays you. Is this a dream come true? Tell us about the episodes. How many are there? When is it streaming?
Yes, it is all a dream come true. It's been magical and beautiful. And I'm so grateful for this whole experience. I've learned a great deal. It's been a gift to co-create the series, both with my sister, but also our beautiful and wonderful producing partners. And it's been a revelation. I've learned so much as a new producer. It is truly wonderful. So it's 8 episodes. It's going to to premiere later this year, September, likely in 2022. I'm very proud of what we've been able to do. I think the work is very beautiful, and I hope it will touch a lot of people.
I'm so excited to see it. If it's anything like your book, it for sure. You're an accomplished actor and you have over 60 film and television credits. So on top of all this, now you get to add producer. So congratulations to that. But tell us about your love for acting and about your current recurring role on Never Have I Ever.
Yes, I have been an actor. That was what brought me to LA. That's how I began my career. When Saro and I moved here, and I just love it. It is one of the most beautiful ways to spend a life is to be a professional actor. I love it. It was the dream that I had as a child, and the fact that I have been able to make a living as an actor still is like unbelievable to my brain because I know how immensely hard it is. And now, having produced the series, see that my acting career was also marching me or setting me up, I should say, for this moment in my life, because I bring to the table as a producer 20 plus years of a career as an actor in front of the camera. And so I know certain things about a scene or production or what's needed in a moment. As an insider, that really was incredible to observe and watch and be of assistance on set. So that's just wonderful. And so Never Have I Ever was this beautiful gift. We were in the middle of writing all the episodes of from scratch. And I got this call to audition for this project, and it's Mindy Kaling. And I'm like, okay, sure. I love Mindy Kaling. And at the time, I just get my little part, my little scene. So I didn't really understand the scope of the show, particularly because the scripts were under lock and key. And I auditioned, showed up on set, had a great time, had a blast, still don't know how my part fits into the whole. And some 8 months, a year later, I'm sitting at home with my daughter on my couch, and it drops on Netflix. We watch the whole thing and my mouth drops. I'm like, this show is incredible and it is going to change so many lives. And I feel honored to be a part of it. And we laughed and we cried and all the things. I love playing Elise. I love playing Fabiola's mom. And it's an incredibly talented cast. The writers are incredibly gifted.
Congratulations on that. And also congratulations on your new love and your new relationship. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's so kind of you to say. It is a true blessing, and I don't take it for granted.
Well, I ask these two questions to all my guests. If you could write your younger 20-year-old self a Dear Tembi love letter, knowing what you know now, what would you have told yourself?
Go easy, be gentle with yourself, be less critical, find the thing you love and just keep doing it. It will all add up. Be open and available to the surprises and follow your curiosity. The other thing I probably would have told my younger self is find some kind of grounding practice and come back to it. Because we will veer here and there. That's the nature of life. But having something that restores you is important. And I would say have a couple of them because at different times in life, you need different things. It's good to have those practices, whether you do them every day or not. And I certainly don't do them every day, but it's good to have those grounding practices for the moments when you do feel off kilter. You have the thing that you come back to that does ground you.
What are your happiness habits? What do you do that brings you joy?
I love taking walks. That is very joyful and relaxing for me. I love gardening. I love reading, art, and cooking.
Well, congratulations. I cannot wait to see your Netflix series. I'm so honored to have had this time with you.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tembi.
Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you. Bye. This is Rachel Steinman. For more information or to contact me with any questions, comments, or guest ideas, please check out rightnowrachel.com. That's right with a W. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and sharing, dear family. And if you found value in what you've just heard, I would love and so appreciate a great review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, I wish you love, happiness, and good mental health.